Jovan Buha! Buha!
I don't know what that was, but yo, I'm Jovan Buha. I'm a reporter for Buha's Block, and welcome to another live show. We're doing a Lakers Q&A. It's been a minute since we've done one of these. Obviously, we get into the Q&A for hours after games, but wanted to hop on with the madness of today, a big day in Lakerland, and wanted to get into all of that and your guys' questions. Shout out to the chat. Shout out to the late night gang. And I had to push back 10 minutes because I had to finish an ad read that I will be playing at some point during this show. But what up, everybody? Let's get into it. If you guys got any questions, as Anna says, hit the like button, you filthy animals. Yes, let's get those likes up. Craig, Mo Love, I bet replacements are already in place, probably make the announcement soon. So that is in reference to Lakers co-owners, minority owners now, after the official sale, went through to Mark Walter and his group. Joey and Jesse Buss were terminated, fired, let go by the Lakers today from their respective positions. Jesse was the director of scouting. Joey was in charge of the South Bay Lakers. And it officially marks the first big decision of the Mark Walter era. Obviously, there have been some changes and stuff throughout the offseason, but this was the first decision under his stewardship that has happened. And again, we can get into it more when you guys have a specific question for it. But I talked about it. We reacted to it live on Lakers Collective today. It was a pretty insane thing to break while it completely changed the direction of the show. We were going to go more into the rotation and Vando and different things, and we could touch on all that. But obviously a crazy day. Then went to Spectrum and did the show, which actually just aired from 7 to 8 p.m. So crazy day as always, but happy to be tapping in with all of you. Prod is a zombie. La Buha, what up? Craig Osterberg 5045, give OKC scouts the bag for best staff. Yeah, I mean, I think the thing with that for me would just be if I'm the Lakers, I'm not just looking at people who are available. I'm trying to poach people. I'm trying to make people offers they can't refuse, mafia style, and putting bags on the table and saying, come join the Lakers and help usher in the next era of Lakers greatness. So yeah, I mean, I'd be putting, there's no salary cap, right? That you could pay them as much as possible. So whether that's, I mean, I think Presti is going to be difficult to get, but if you could draw some of the best scouts from across the league, looking at the organizations that have continually drafted well and uncovered talent in the G League, I think that's the way to go. Chris Bow, how would the Lakers solve their constant miscommunication on defense? I think part of it's a reps thing where once you get a certain number of reps with a group or a unit, that starts to work itself out. I think LeBron being the captain of the defense, this could be its own version, or I think one way to, you guys know where I'm at with the starting group and what I think it should be, but if you want to make the argument to stagger LeBron and Marcus from a defensive communication perspective, you could argue that like LeBron is the quarterback of the defense with the starters and Marcus is the quarterback of the defense with the bench units because of how vocal those guys are and calling out coverages and alignments and whatnot. So I think that's a possibility, but in terms of solving it, like I think everybody has to take accountability and be more aggressive in their switching. I think you saw a real shift in that second half in terms of them going from soft switching to harder switching and pushing up against ball handlers and forcing them to be on their heels rather than vice versa. And I think it's really just going to be film work, guys taking accountability, guys really owning that and making it a point of emphasis to do it. Because I think naturally that's not the strength of that starting group and not the strength of a lot of the players in the rotation. I've talked about this before. There are a more quiet group, they're a more introverted group. And JJ has talked about, I think when they're at their worst, they're not communicating out there. So that's not necessarily a strength of this group. And I think LeBron will obviously help in that regard. And I think we already saw some of that in the Utah game. And then Marcus is the other guy who's constantly harping on guys. But I think it's a combination of reps, accountability, film work, and the coaching staff and players really making it a point of emphasis and continuing to drill it down. And if I'm JJ, I think that's something you have to be hitting on every single game plan. And he's talked about this where sometimes during the course of a season, you focus on certain things and then you turn your attention away from something else that you had previously focused on. And then your team improves in one aspect, but then they slip in another aspect. I think this is an aspect they have to harp on, because the only way this group is going to actualize its potential in the defensive end, which to me is maybe like the 12th best defense in the NBA, is going to be everybody being on a string, everybody communicating, everybody being in sync defensively. And that has to start with, again, film work, continually harping on it on practice and in your pregame meetings, and guys really making this a big point of emphasis, because there are some defenses that you could just throw out, like OKC, you could just throw out there and they have the athletes, they have the speed, they have the size, that they have all that defensively, where it almost doesn't matter what they're doing. They could play zone, they could press full court, like they could go about it a variety of ways where they're gonna be fine sort of regardless. The Lakers need to be a very detail oriented defense. I do not think they've been that consistently up to this point in the season. I think that's the big thing now that everybody's healthy, now that the starters are back. That's my focus, because the offense is going to be better. We saw like LeBron basically played in a preseason game for LA. That was his first game as a Laker, and they put up 140. They put up a season high. And yes, part of it is Utah. They're not a good defensive team. Teams light them up. But still, you saw the impact LeBron had. You saw the way that the offense functioned. The key is going to be the defensive end. That is going to determine the Lakers' ceiling this season, as I've continually said since the offseason. And I think that needs to be the point of emphasis. Ooh to the we. Thank you for the super chat. Sounds corny. I think DA just needed to find a home. When he's happy, he's locked in, he's having fun, and LJ will be good for him. Props to DA. Yeah, I've touched on this a couple times over the past 24 hours or so, that it can sometimes seem a little corny or cheesy when guys are hyping up a certain guy, or they're wearing the half Lion, half Ayton shirts and stuff. But I think for a guy who has been criticized a lot and been a punching bag at times, and had controversial exits in Phoenix and Portland, and had different stuff reported about him and said about him, and just taken a lot of heat and a lot of flack. And even when he signed with the Lakers, right? Like, I think Laker fans were really excited, but a lot of the NBA was mocking this signing, was mocking DA, was mocking the Lakers. And for him to come in and basically buy into his role from day one, I think starting at that offseason press conference that he had, he's been incredible. And there are certainly areas that I think he could be better with, in terms of the turnovers and in terms of more consistently playing up defensively and not giving guys space to just dribble into shots. But outside of that, he's shooting. He's one of the most efficient shooters and finishers right now in the NBA. There was I think someone did a 2-point percentage breakdown of rim shooting, short mid-range, long mid-range, and DA was like right there, right behind Jokic, which is just wild. But the screening, the rolling hard, the rebounding, the rim protection, all that stuff has been just awesome. And yeah, I mean, the real question, I think longer term, is like, is he playing his way out of the Lakers price range, or at least into a situation where the Lakers are going to have to pay him 20 plus million or something next summer? Like, it's way too early to have that conversation, but that's the thing on my mind of like, he's definitely out playing his contract this season. And if things continue on this current trajectory, he would be foolish to stay on the current contract. He should opt out and get more money. But, I think for the Lakers, especially if they go far in the playoffs, it would make a lot of sense to just re-sign him. An NBA enjoyer, thank you for the super chat. How's your day, bro? Also, 2 episodes of Lakers Collective is so sick. Why did you guys decide on 2 per week? Revenue, enjoy making it, fan demand. My day was good, crazy. So got up and did some work and some prep for Lakers Collective. Then we did Lakers Collective at 11. Went about a little over an hour and a half. Then drove straight to El Segundo for Spectrum and got there around 1:30. Went through hair and makeup and all that stuff. Changed into my suit. Taped from a little after 2 to a little after 3. Then went home and took a little bit of a break, played some Fortnite, and then turned on, watched some Clippers Magic, and then I watched the end of Sixers Bucks. Tyrese Maxey dropped 54 in overtime. And then I made a steak, and then I recorded my ad read and came on here. So that was the breakdown of my day. Yes, Lakers, 2 episodes of Lakers Collective is sick. We decided, we had already talked about when we initially did it that the goal was to get to 2 per week. I would say it's been a smashing success from a subscriber perspective, from an views perspective, from an audience feedback perspective. People have really been enjoying it. So that's been great to hear. So it's a combination, I would say, of it was a longer term goal when we all came together. We just weren't sure when exactly we were going to agree to it. There has been a revenue component of the channel has already monetized and hit the YouTube threshold for ad revenue and is doing well on that front. And then we also have different sponsors that have been reaching out wanting to get a piece of the show. So it was a combination, I think, of we all noted and saw that you guys were asking for more episodes and wishing that we could do it on a more frequent basis. So the tentative plan right now is Mondays and Thursdays moving forward with some flexibility, especially on my part, as I'm not traveling much the first half of the season, but going to be traveling more the second half of the season. My first road trip is actually coming up with the Boston trip. I'm going out there to Boston. So, a little flexibility there with what day of the week it's going to be, but really excited to be doing it 2 times a week. And definitely a combination of that was a longer term goal that we actually just hit that benchmark sooner than expected. And certainly the demand from the audience has been incredible and really humbling. Zach Wan, thank you for the super chat. Number 1, trade. Lakers get Herb Jones, Keon Ellis, and Santi Aldama. Memphis gets Gabe Vincent, Misi, and LAL swap. And Sacramento gets Dalton and an LAL swap. Pelicans get Rui, an LAL first, and a second. And Memphis gets a second. What do you think of LA's offense versus Houston's offense? Okay. A couple of good questions here. So I don't even have to remember what the Lakers are giving up in this trade. I will sign off on the Lakers side of it. They're technically giving up what? Gabe, Dalton, a swap, a first and a second, and Rui. It is a lot to give up, to be clear, but you're getting, I would give up, I've been on record saying I'd give up Rui and a first for Herb. I think he's at that level. And then Santi Aldama is, I view him as more than just a throw-in in this trade. Santi is a real, he'd be an interesting bench big for LA. And then Keon Ellis, right there, you're getting your 2 perimeter defenders that I think really elevate the Lakers' perimeter defense. And Santi Aldama could play in 2 big looks, depending on if he's almost I'd say he's more of a 4.5, but next to 8 and next to Hayes, he can space the floor. He can function next to another big. But you could also go with smaller groups you could do a Rui. Well, actually Rui's gone, but you could do Jake, LeBron, Aldama, or Herb, LeBron, Aldama, and mix it up a bit. So Lakers side, yes. From the Memphis side, they're giving up Aldama, but they are getting and a second, but they're getting Gabe and Misi in a swap. I think Memphis would do that in a second just to get Misi as like a longer term piece. Sacramento gets DK and a swap. Might not be enough for Sacramento. I think that's might be the first roadblock we hit here. And then Pelicans getting Rui a first, and 2 seconds. That's pretty, I think, close to fair value for Herb Jones. They might technically want more, but I think you might have come up with the rare 4-team trade where it makes some sense for everybody. I think Sacramento might want a little bit more than, like, I've talked about this before, but just with the way that the Lakers swaps are projecting right now, you can sell it to your fan base as like, hey, we got a swap. But realistically, I would pick the Lakers to be better than the Kings for at least the next 5 years, if not infinitely moving forward. So even if you get like the Lakers 2030 or 2030 swap or whatever, it's hard to have confidence if you're the Kings that you're going to be better than the Lakers and the swap's going to be worth it. So you're functionally trading Keon for Dalton, which I would not do if I'm the Kings. But again, I don't want to pretend to understand their process. So that's an interesting 4-team trade. I think every team would at least have to consider that, which I think is hard to do when you're dealing with a 4-team trade. In terms of LA's offense versus Houston's offense, they are totally different offenses. But you got to give Houston credit. Like you got, those who have been listening to the show for a while and heard me talk about them during my West power rankings segments over the offseason. I still, going into the season, had Houston third. I thought that there was a real chance that they would actually end up being better in the long run without Fred VanVleet in terms of forcing Amen Thompson to learn on the fly as a primary ball handler, and then also leaning more into Kevin Durant and Alperen Şengün. We've seen that, and they've been the best offense in the NBA. I don't think that's going to sustain, but it's working right now. And a big piece of it is just Steven Adams is a monster who rebounds nearly 30% of all offensive, missed shots when he's on the floor, which is just an absurd number. As a team, they're rebounding over 40% of their misses, which is also in absurd numbers. So they're big, they're tough, they're nasty, they're physical. They play smash mouth basketball. They got a nice combination of physicality and athleticism. And some people have jokingly said like their offense is geared around missing shots and cleaning it up with second chance points. That's kind of true, kind of a joke. But I think Amen Thompson, how many 6'7" freak athletes are there in the NBA like that playing point guard? Not many, if any, at all to that level in terms of he's just a rare combination of he might be the most athletic player in the NBA or in that conversation. And so like he's developing as a lead ball handler. Reed Shepherd has started to look more comfortable in a rotation role, and I think progressively been playing better. They've had some nice contributions from Tari Eason, who's out right now, but Josh Okogie's had some flashes with them. So they're Jabari Smith. I really like to me, Jabari Smith is sort of the Rui of Houston. Better defensively, not the shooter that Rui is, but kind of that in between scorer who good shooter, will get some baskets off of cuts, can post up or hit those little turnarounds. So I really like this Houston group right now. It's tough to compare them to the Lakers because the Lakers have 3 players in Luka, LeBron, and Austin who are better playmakers and passers than anybody on Houston. Like Şengün has really stepped up as a playmaker. He's doing, people have called him Baby Jokic. I would say it's even like, I don't know. It's tough to compare him to Jokic. Obviously Jokic is his own, monster, Frankenstein, whatever you want to compare it to. But even Baby Jokic feels a little disrespectful to Şengün for how Şengün has developed. But it's just like the Lakers are a far more pick and roll, get downhill with Luka and Austin, get to the free throw line, get to the middies. We're going to see how they incorporate LeBron. Already was a lot of post ups and hit aheads in transition and whatnot. But these teams are a bit different. One thing, though, I think for the Lakers that I would try to aspire to from Houston's offense is they have really leaned into the KD Şengün pick and roll and the two-man game between those two. And certainly there are some teams where there's going to be the mismatch of a big on Şengün and a wing on KD. And if you switch that, that's problematic both ways. But there are some times when it's just like-sized players and you're not really generating the advantage, but they're still spamming that and trying to find ways to attack a defense through that I think the Lakers could learn from, because I've been a big proponent of, I want to see more LeBron Luka two-man game. And again, there's going to be some times where the defense is able to negate that or just switch it really easily and not really create that advantage. But I think that's one of the next things I'd like to see more consistently from LA is just spamming more Luka, Austin. So I guess in comparing them, like, I think the Lakers have a much better group of passing and overall more offensive weapons / scorers, finishers than the Rockets. But right now, the Rockets, I think, are more fully formed in their identity. And Şengün is playing at an All-NBA level. KD has been playing at an All-Star, third-team All-NBA level as well. Thompson's developing, and that's a team that they just play hard every night. They crash the offensive glass. They dominate it at a historic level. And then they've also shot the ball really well from three. Not a high volume three-point shooting team, but good three-point shooting team percentage-wise. So I think both teams could struggle with turnovers. That's probably the two biggest Achilles for both right now. Lakers also shooting, of course, has not been the best start for them. But yeah, I mean, I think in a 7-game series, I think LA, it's really comes down to LA's offense versus Houston's defense, because I do think LA can really test Houston's defense. And then for LA, I think it comes down to their defensive rebounding, which has been really good. But Houston has a clear size and physicality advantage on them in the front court. And they got to probably put like 2 dudes on Steven Adams. Philip, thank you for the super chat. Sup, Jay? How's the general mood been around Lakers facilities since the firings? I get a bittersweet vibe. Yeah, so unfortunately, I picked a bad day to skip practice. I was not there today. We were recording at 11, which conflicted with practice. And, you know, I decided to, and I was already going to be going out there for Spectrum. So I just decided to skip practice today. And of course, breaking news happens, and sometimes that's how it goes. But my sense in the conversations I've had throughout the day, it is, to your point, like a bittersweet vibe. I think there is excitement about the future and building something new and fresh, and the track record and success that Mark Walter had with the Dodgers. And he came in there and made some pretty big changes, and they all have largely, if not entirely, worked out, right? And they've become one of the best organizations, not just in baseball, but in sports. And that's the goal for the Lakers, is to be one of the best, not just one of the best organizations in the NBA, but one of the best organizations in sports, period. So I think there is a little bit, there is certainly excitement, but anytime there's layoffs or people getting fired, or, you know, like there is the human component of this. And that's the part that I tried to hit on earlier on Lakers Collective with, like, you know, for me, especially growing up a Lakers fan, like there is this, I remember the parades with the three-peat, and, you know, seeing the Bus brothers when they were much younger, like riding in the car with their dad. And, you know, just like they've all, like, the Buses have always been a part of our lives, right? For those who have been following this team for quite some time. So I think just thinking about at least what we know publicly that has been said and come out about Dr. Bus's wishes, it did seem like he wanted to keep this in the family, both in terms of owning the team and also having his family run, you know, his children run the team. And that, unfortunately, is not how this is playing out. I think for Lakers fan, like, two things can be true, right? Like, for Lakers fans, I do think they are set up for success longer term in the big picture, right? But I think from just, like, Dr. Bus is obviously one of the biggest figures in Lakers history. And I think, you know, he was the person who not single-handedly, but played a giant role in making this franchise what it was. And I think like just thinking about his wishes and how he would have felt about all this, it obviously would have been interesting, but we'll never know. But I also, so I think that could be true, but the Lakers can also be set up better, right? So that it is a bittersweet. I think that's probably the right word, but it wasn't just the buses, right? Like they are turning over most of the scouting department. There was a few other people who were let go. So anytime somebody loses a job, like the buses are going to be okay. They are inheriting their slice of the sale, and they set up a new investment firm, and they're going to be okay in the long run, right? Like it is, you can't really put a price on like being the owner of a team and losing that, right? And working for a team and being fired from that. Like there's no amount. I know some people I've seen kind of talking about, well, they're going to be fine. They made their money, but it's like, you can't put a price on owning the Lakers. That is priceless. I mean, it's worth $10 billion, but being a part of that and being born into that and that being what you grew up around, I can't imagine there's not a level of heartbreak or gut punch on their part. And my understanding is this has been in the works since the sale and the vote, but also even going back to like a couple years ago, there started to be a bit of a growing disconnect between the brothers and Jeannie and Rob. And this had been trending in this direction slowly over the past couple of years. And then this was seemingly an inevitability once the sale went through. I was a bit surprised by the timeline in terms of it happening right now, just a few weeks after the sale. It feels like it could have been something that maybe happened in the offseason, but we'll see obviously how they move forward in terms of how quickly they're hiring people, who they already have in mind, and how those things play out. But certainly whenever someone is fired, there is, and again, like even if you want to say that the Bus brothers are going to be okay because they're going to get hundreds of millions, if not billions of dollars, depending on the breakdown, there are other people who lost their jobs today. And anytime that happens, it sucks. And to be honest, my read on this is it was not a performance-based thing where the scouting department's been the bright spot of the Lakers organization for the last 10 to 15 years. If you were ranking or rating every part of the front office and just basketball ops, scouting would be number one. I think even over players. Like the scouting has been a resounding success, and obviously it's not been as much of a success recently, but I've also heard different things on that and had heard them months and years ago, not just today, right? Because whenever there's something like this, you hear things and then it starts to be people have their narratives, people are doing revisionist history. But in terms of, specifically the JHS pick, I'd heard at the time when they did the JHS pick that it was a very split decision internally within the scouting department. And a lot of people wanted Cam Whitmore. And that was not the way they went because of the medicals with his knee. But there were some pretty strong voices in the room trying to push for Cam Whitmore, and that did not happen. So, yeah, I mean, definitely a bittersweet vibe. And the Lakers are not practicing tomorrow now. They are doing some team outing/event. So no official practice, but we'll be there on Saturday when they have their next practice, and we'll report back what the mood is. Jay Spares, thank you for the super chat. Okay, first trade idea. Hear me out. Rui and Dalton for MPJ. Contract isn't that bad. Salary is tough to match, but it's doable. He's just a big game guy, in my opinion. I can't get there. I'm sorry. So I'm going to pull up the contract. What's funny is in my search bar on Google, the last thing I searched for with MPJ was his podcast and some of the podcasting he's done. And that's where I think we've seen, I don't want to, like, sometimes it's easy to pile on a guy after they leave and make them the scapegoat or put everything on them. But this is the best Denver has looked to start a season maybe ever in the Jokic era. It's the best defense they played in a season in the Jokic era. It's the best start from Aaron Gordon and Jamal Murray. The vibes are at an all-time high. I don't want to put that entirely on MPJ. I also don't want to not put that on MPJ at all. Like I think the truth is always somewhere in the middle. And I think part of it is like him not being there. And we've seen this generationally bad podcast run that he's been on throughout the offseason into even this week on the Lonzo and Jello podcast. I think that guy, like, you'll get what I'm about to say, but there's some major D'Lo vibes there, and I just don't like that. And yes, he was held in check in Denver to a degree, right, and was a big part of them winning that 2023 title, but I don't think he's been quite the same guy since then. And I think, I don't know, if we are basing it on, I don't know, maybe I'm too principle based, but I do believe in like character and principles, and I'm not a guy who likes to overlook those things. And I don't know. If I'm trying to build the Lakers culture that they're trying to build with a certain level of resiliency and team first belief and selflessness and all this stuff, he just doesn't check those boxes for me personally. So if we're saying who is the best player of these three, it is MPJ. It's MPJ. He's the most skilled and talented and gifted, but he's making $38 million. So just to get, he's making 38.3 this season, 40.8 next season. So that's a monster number to fit into your cap sheet. And I mean, look, if Brooklyn's willing to throw in a first, now we're talking a different, now it's a different tune. But the fact that Denver had to attach a first to get off of him, and I don't think he's raised his trade value since that whole situation. I think if anything, it's gone down. It's going to be so. It would have to be something like even Rui. It has to be something like Rui, Gabe, and Maxey. Like Rui, Gabe, and Dalton, or Rui, Maxey, and Dalton does not even get you there from a financial perspective. So that's the tricky part here, is that from a salary matching perspective, it is hard for LA to get into that high 30s. I think you can get there with Rui, Gabe, and Maxey, but now you're giving up 3 players for 1. Brooklyn, I don't know their roster situation off the top of my head, but it's hard to just take on 2 extra players. And, they could waive them, they could stretch them, there's different things they could do. And they do have some flexibility to potentially do that. But I don't know. And then, I mean, if we're being real about it, like now this whole 5th starter conversation and some of the limitations, you're replacing Rui with a worse defender. Now, he is a better rebounder than Rui, and he has been a starter and a closer on a championship team, so I don't want to overlook that. But MPJ is not improving your defense, especially in comparison to Rui, even with Rui's limitations and I think regression on that end this season. So you're not starting Marcus Smart over MPJ based on his status and his contract and all that stuff. So I'm pretty out on this. But I'm sure that the chat has some thoughts here. Dylan, thank you for the super chat. Thoughts on LeBron / MJ upcoming Mind the Game episode? I somehow missed that. I did not know they're doing a Mind the Game. I'm not seeing any. Okay. This is I don't know where this is from. I see there was a rumor like a week ago, or that Jordan will be on. Yeah, it looks like this is a rumor that is unsubstantiated. If it is true, I think that's going to be a great episode, and I'm looking forward to that. I'm a little skeptical, but hey, he had Steph on, so it seems like anything is possible. I'm going to do one more question, then I will take a quick break for the ad read, and then we will be back. Ryan, thank you for the super chat. In my opinion, we use a first round pick at deadline as we were willing last year. So you're saying you think the Lakers will use a first round pick. I think it just depends on who's available and what the price is. My understanding is that it's going to have to be someone who is more of a long-term fit. That's where, like, say a Herb Jones compared to a Dylan Brooks, even if, like, I think Herb Jones just checks more boxes anyway and would rather have him regardless of his contract or his age or whatnot. But then you factor in the contract, the age, and him being a longer-term fit with Luka. That's where it makes a lot more sense to give up a first for Herb Jones compared to a guy like Dylan Brooks or even potentially Andrew Wiggins. So I would probably agree with that. But going to take a quick break right now for the best possible deal on Lakers tickets. Look no further than the sponsor of today's video, SeatGeek. With over 35 million downloads, SeatGeek is the #1 ticketing app. There are more than 70,000 events listed on SeatGeek, including concerts, sports, festivals, and more. The NBA, NFL, college football, and college basketball are all underway. I love using SeatGeek, whether it's for USC football tickets or trying to help a friend or family member get the best deal possible on Lakers tickets. And SeatGeek has your back. Each ticket is rated on a scale of 1 to 10, so you know you're getting a good deal. So look for the green dots. Green means good, red means bad. Plus, every ticket is backed by their buyer guarantee. And of course, I have a code for you guys. You could use code Jovan10 for 10% off your next purchase at SeatGeek. That's 10% off any tickets with promo code Jovan10. Make sure you click the link in the description to download the app and have the code automatically added to your account so you could use it later. Thank you, SeatGeek. All right, we are back. Back to the super chats. Light them up. Do you think missing on JHS and DK or not agreeing to sell the team to Walters had to do with their firing? Way more the latter than the former. Again, I got to be careful what I say, but I mean, there was an interview today in The Athletic with Jesse Buss and Dan Wojcicki of The Athletic, and he said he has not spoken to Jeannie and Rob in 5 months, which some quick math that basically brings us to a little bit before the draft or so. And he said the last time he spoke to his sister was when she told him they were selling the team and they needed to vote on it, or that they were proposing to sell the team and they needed to vote on it. And then again, Rob, that would be like right before the draft or right around the draft. Maybe it's not exactly 5 months. But my understanding is, again, as I mentioned earlier, this has been something that has been in the works for a couple of years of them being phased out. And that has included them having less of a say in the draft. So look, I'm not in the draft room and I hear different things, but I will note that at the time of the JHS and DK picks, not now, but at the time, respectively, I had heard there was some pushback from some within the scouting department on each of those picks. Now, again, I want to be clear, like, this is not a revisionist thing where I'm hearing this now. I did continue to hear it now, but I was hearing that at the time of the picks. And remember, with JHS, that was a guy who was not even projected to be a top 20 pick in most mock drafts. So the Lakers went out on a bit of a limb, taking him where they took him. And the guy that they were hoping fell to them was Kobe Buffkin, and that was a guy they were really high on. But then once Cam Whitmore, but they were also assuming Cam Whitmore was not going to be there. So once Kobe Buffkin got taken, there was a push internally, I heard at the time, and have since heard, and have heard again today, among some in the scouting department to push for Cam Whitmore. And ultimately, they did not make the decision. Even then, I would be clear here that the hierarchy of the way that things have gone down, I'm going to put the Ramesses to the side for a second, but it is like Rob is the ultimate decision maker in the front office. And then, of course, there's a direct line to Jeannie as the former governor and you know, currently still going to be the governor for the time being. But, you know, like Mark Walter is of course, the now majority owner. So even if you want to put some of the blame on the Buss brothers, I do think it is worth noting of just like the hierarchy of the front office, that it's like number one technically is Jeannie and then number two is Rob, and then it's everybody else. So even if they were pushing for those names, it had to go up the chain of command to be approved. But again, I was hearing at the time, hearing over the last couple of years, and hearing even today that it was not unanimous. It was not like everyone, especially JHS more than Dalton. I think with Dalton, they didn't even interview Dalton because they didn't think he was going to be available then. Dalton, the day of the draft, Dalton was projected to go 6th to Charlotte by ESPN. Dalton slipped a lot, and that was a unique situation. But even then, there were some people who wanted Misi. And then with the JHS situation, there was a vocal segment of the scouting department that wanted Cam Whitmore. And the reason they ultimately passed on him was the knee. For some people, they were viewing it similar to the guy we just talked about, MPJ, where it's like, you got to bet on the talent and take the risk on the guy and the injury situation, bet on the talent. And they ultimately passed on him. And now you could also say, hey, they passed on Jaime Jaquez and Brandon Pajemski, and like there was other guys that they could have also taken or advocated for instead of JHS. But my understanding is I would say if I'm attributing blame for the JHS and Dalton picks, they would not be the first person I put that on. But them opposing the sale, I think, is a real thing where so you got the other 4 siblings who all wanted it, and now you have these 2 siblings who didn't. So that's its own dynamic between the siblings. But then you also have Mark Walter coming in. These people were basically voting against you owning the team, and it's understandable why they would do that, because they wanted to continue to own the team and continue to, and technically they obviously still own it, but like own the majority of it. But they also wanted to longer term be in charge of basketball operations and be part of the front office and organization moving forward. So I think it's certainly more so the latter than the former. I think if it's convenient to put that on them, and there seems to be some of that out there. But again, my understanding, and this is not a revisionist history thing where I'm hearing this today. This is something I've known. I just haven't really talked about because maybe I've talked about it a little bit, but it wasn't really the time. But today's the time. Shabugan, thank you for the super chat. I joined the stream and people are throwing out Rui for MPJ. What in the world is going on? Listen, Jay Spares is my guy. So, I'm not going to rag on him, but yeah, I'm not an MPJ guy. I'm not an MPJ guy. Shabugan again, MPJ is proof that there are too many podcasts. Yes, but I will say, like, just like in reality TV, you need the villain, right? Like everybody hates on the villain, everybody rags on the villain, but the villain makes things interesting. MPJ he's entertaining, right? I do not co-sign or agree with 99% of the things he says, but it does make for great content. It does make for interesting content. So in a way, yes, there are too many podcasts, but I can't help but enjoy some of the things that MPJ says from like just a pure comedic perspective, not an actual, like, he's not breaking down stuff on his show as intricately as some of the other NBA pods, but dude is funny. I will give him that. Probably unintentionally funny. That's actually the best. It's a lot of unintentional comedy. Sarah, thank you for the super chat. The constant trade propositions are tiring. Let's not make trades just to make one. We are in a good place, not a desperate place. Let's enjoy. Yeah, amen. I think the Lakers, again, like the only thing I'm looking for if I'm the Lakers from a trade perspective, but we're still at least a month out from that, if not further, is a better two-way wing to be that fifth guy, right? And that I think will continue to be a conversation, but I feel like at this point we've gone through most of the options, most of the trade frameworks, and it's going to be about, do those guys stay healthy? What are the costs in trade season from like second half of December through early February? Does anybody else shake loose? And like there's a lot of factors and a lot of just unknown variables at this point. So yeah, I think Lakers have won 3 in a row. They're 11-4, fourth in the West. LeBron is back. I think we should all just enjoy that. Jay Spare says, retiring from trade analysis. Chat loved it, though. That is in reference to the MPJ trade. Shibugan, when we get to how about Rui for MPJ, the fifth starter combos have jumped the shark. This stuff needs to end. Thank you for the super chat. Tom, I feel we have to make a move and push for a championship this year as LAL will be more expensive in the future. ARDA, Luka, Rui, they're all getting bigger money or waiting for them. Also, we still have LeBron. That is good, good analysis. The Lakers are, their financial situation is going to be much different next year. Austin's probably going to be making 3 times as much or close to 3 times as much as he's currently making. DA, I think, should easily make double what he's making. Luka's obviously going to have his extension kick in. Rui is due for a raise. So to your point, that's 4 guys right there that are going to be making more money. It's probably going, you also still have Dalton under contract, Dew under contract. You have Vando under contract. And so Jake under contract. So you already have some money tied up going into some of these raises. Then you still have LeBron. And if all those guys get raises, if AR's back on the new max or near max contract, if DA gets a raise into the high teens or low 20s, if Rui gets a raise into the low 20s, if LeBron is back, even if he takes a pay cut, but let's say it's like $25-30 million, which I think is very presumptive here that he's going to take that big of a pay cut, but we'll see. We're talking, and then Luka's extension kicks in. We're talking about like not a lot of flexibility there, and LA already basically having like close to their full roster. So to your point, like, I mean, that's I guess that's maybe the argument for potentially trading Rui, is that you're not going to have much flexibility in the future. I mean, you could obviously re-sign him and flip him, similar to Austin or Ayton or whoever, but realistically, like, I guess that there is some argument to go for it now. They will have 3 picks in the summer, but I don't think they should make a move just to make a move. I think if there is the right move to make for the 5th starter, I think you have to strongly consider it. But I also want to see a larger sample size with this group. Like, maybe the defense turns a corner. Maybe they can replicate what they did against New Orleans and Milwaukee more consistently. And if they're defending like that on a nightly basis, that's a group that will ascend to top 5 offensively, but can maybe knock on the door of top 12 or top 10, probably top 12 defensively. And that's a sweet spot where I think if you're top 3 offense and a top 12 defense, you are a contender. Like, you just are. So I think that should be the goal for LA. Cammy, thank you for the super chat. Rob Prob won't be fired, but what about adding help? I think that's a good breakdown of the situation here, because I think Rob is safe. He did the Luka trade. He got an extension. I don't see any scenario in which he is not safe right now. I think, again, it was partly a cleaning house and moving forward, like, new chapter element, but it was also a couple of these people who voted against the sale and have been on the outs to some degree with Rob and Jeannie for a couple of years. I think there was a culmination of multiple things leading into today's decision. I would like to add, if I'm Mark Walter, I would love to add some help into the front office, preferably people who don't have ties to the Lakers and don't have ties to Rob. I would like, if I'm them, I'm scouring who are the best basketball minds possible. And I don't think it's, unless they go with the Godfather offer for Sam Presti or someone of that ilk, and that person, I mean, like, if you're bringing in Sam Presti, he's going to be ahead of Rob. Like, that's just, it is what it is. But outside of something like that, more likely it's bringing in people below Rob. And I think people coming in with no ties to the organization, no ties to Jeannie, no ties to Rob, that would be an overall positive of what are the best basketball decisions? What is the best basketball philosophy? What are we building here as a culture? And of course, Rob will have a big say in that. But I think if you just end up hiring, yes, men and women under him, and it just becomes this like echo chamber, that's where, to Jesse's point in the interview he did with The Athletic, like, he was like, and I agree with him. I think like things do need to change from how they've been the last 10 years. Right. And I think hopefully Mark makes those changes, that it's like new voices, new perspectives, and not much of the same, because I would say there's been a lot left on the table as an organization and as a front office in general over the past 5 to 10 years. Light them up. Thank you for the super chat. Do you think of doing Bronny in the G just for this week or more long term? I think they're going to be bouncing back and forth, but right now with the Lakers having this break, I think it makes a lot of sense for both those guys to get more reps. Like, I don't think either of them project to be in the primary rotation when this group is fully healthy, as we saw against Utah. Neither one of them was in the top 9. So if you could get Adu and Bronny more practice reps and more game reps, then I think it makes a ton of sense. So I don't think either one of those guys have played their way out of being in the G League. I think Bronny should be in the G League and getting G League reps. And I think Adu, especially coming off the injury, the time off that he's had, he should be getting as many in-game reps as possible as well. And like, he's a second-round pick. Most second-round picks tend to play in the G League. That's just how it is. So I've liked the flashes I've seen from him, to be clear, but I don't think he's like penciled in the rotation or like above a G League stint. So not saying you're saying that, but I know sometimes there's a stigma with guys going back down to the G League, or people overreact to it. I would not overreact to this. I think it's going to be now. I don't yet know about Sunday and if they're going to be recalled by then. I would assume that with the full group, the Lakers, you always want at least 12 guys active and available, right? So maybe they're down with the G, but I wouldn't be surprised if they get called back up for the game and maybe end up going back to the G. But I think it's going to be, you can recall your guys as much as you want. So I would not be surprised if they go back and forth. I love my girlfriend or something. I like it. Thank you for the super chat. If you could replace LeBron for any player, who would you choose for best fit with Luka and Reaves? Herb Jones makes us contenders. Great show. I do think Herb Jones would make the Lakers a contender, especially if there was a way to keep Rui out of that trade. I think it's unlikely that you'd be able to keep Rui out of that trade. But adding Herb and keeping Rui, 100% yes. Flipping Rui for Herb, you are taking an offense and shooting hit, but you are, I think, massively improving your defense. Like 32 minutes of Rui being replaced by 32 minutes of Herb Jones, totally different defensive ceiling, in my opinion. I think the Lakers could be a top 10 defense in that case. But, I think his shot's got to maintain. He's got to stay healthy. And, maybe you could stretch that into like a bigger trade or do like a smaller move to shore up maybe another spot. But I do think he definitely elevates them closer. Like, I will say, OKC's beating everybody by 15 points a game. Like, that was not on my bingo card. They are kind of like running away with just being the best team in the NBA and looking like one of the best teams of all time. So I don't know if anyone's catching OKC, but I think Herb Jones definitely is a step toward LA catching them. In terms of replacing LeBron with any player, I think it would have to either be a big wing who could defend at a high level, or like a better center. But with how Ayton's playing, that's a really high bar. But a better center who's also like a really good defender. So, I mean, sure, like I guess Wemby would be a great player to replace LeBron with. Evan Mobley comes to mind. I mean, I'm thinking like big here, because if you're just telling me replace LeBron with like an above average starter, that is clearly like a big hit to the Lakers. So if we're talking like, you got to probably be in the top 25 mix for this to even be a conversation. So among those types of guys, I would probably go Wemby, Evan Mobley, Jaylen Brown. I'm trying to think of guys who can play, because like we could go down the list, but I don't think like a Donovan Mitchell or a Jalen Brunson makes much sense when you already have a Luka and an Austin, right? Like it's got to be some sort of big wing or a big man, and like I would like a Jaren Jackson Jr., but I don't think he's right now at that level of being a top 25 guy anymore, if he ever was. And I think there was a couple of years there he was borderline, but yeah, I mean, I think those are the three that pop into my mind immediately. Let me quickly look at the standings just to make sure. I mean, J-Dub, Chet, those guys come to mind. Aaron Gordon, I really like, just isn't I think he'd be a really good fit. I just, again, if you're replacing LeBron, I want a certain level of offense to go along with it. KD, but like the defense, I don't know. Julius is interesting, but not good enough defensively for what I'd want. And looking at the East, yeah, I think that the names I would say the top three for me would probably be, well, and of course, like Giannis, sure. So I would say Wemby, Giannis, Mobley, and Jaylen Brown are like three star player archetypes that I think would fit really well with what the Lakers are doing. XX Melo, 15. What is the scouting department's oiling like? I do not know what that means. What does it matter, bro? Thank you for the super chat. The singular non-basketball reasoning for Rui not coming off the bench, not being seen as selfish when this fan base killed D'Lo for not wanting to come off the bench for the same reason, unfair, and why he has to go. So you are, I've actually made this point, not in this manner, but a similar point over the past 24 hours or so in terms of, or I guess 48, going back to the game, in terms of, this does remind me a little bit of the D'Lo situation. To be clear, I think D'Lo could be more of a downer. Like Rui is not a downer, and I think even if they moved Rui to the bench, there would not be like D'Lo could be a bit of a buzzkill mood wise. Where, and I mean, now it's coming out in Dallas. It was, it's been in Golden State. It's been like it's not been great. His Minnesota, like his stops have not ended well, but with Rui, I don't think you have that fear of him potentially being like this down presence in the locker room. I just think he's made it clear he wants to start. The splits back it up in terms of him starting versus coming off the bench, and he is in a contract year, and starting versus coming off the bench matters in terms of perception and value and contract. It just does. It just does. So is it going to matter a lot? No, but I think if Rui's playing 26 minutes off the bench versus starting at 32, 33 minutes, that could be the difference between him making $24 million a year versus $20 million a year, or like $18, $19 million a year. Like it could have a multi-million difference in his perception and his value. So I get all the reasons why he would want to start and why the Lakers would factor that into him starting. But the way I'm reading the tea leaves, the way I feel like this is going to go is probably the starting group just isn't as good as it could or should be. And eventually at some point here in the next, before the new year, JJ has to pull the plug, and as long as Marcus can stay healthy, I think he's or unless they make a trade or Marcus isn't healthy, I think the logical thing would just be to swap in Marcus. I don't think it's a reason for him to have to go, but it's certainly for me, if it really comes down to it's a big thing, then that obviously is an additional factor. Kami or Kami, next time you should ask Luka a question in Serbian. I'm a little shy with my public speaking Serbian. I'm not as confident in it as I wish I was. I did greet him in Serbian publicly at his intro presser, and then we've spoken a little Serbian off to the side at different points of going back to last season. Not this season yet, but I am secretly working on it to get more comfortable to continue to develop that relationship with Luka. But it's a really good idea, and you're guilting me into doing it. Mac Roblox 94, thank you for the super chat. Will the Lakers start Marcus Smart and not Rui? I don't think that's changing soon. In part because I think the Lakers are about to go on a tear here, and if you look at the schedule, they're going to be what is the next time the Lakers are not going to be favored in a game? And to be clear, it doesn't mean they're going to win at all these games, but at Utah, they'll be favored versus the Clippers, versus Dallas, versus New Orleans, versus Phoenix. They'll be favored in each of the next 5 games. Then at Toronto, I mean, look, Toronto is no joke. They are number 2 in the East right now. I want to make sure they're still number 2. Yeah, still number 2 in the East. And then they get the back-to-back at Boston. So I think they should still be favored at Boston. Maybe at Philly, they're not favored. 3rd game of the trip. Then they go at Utah, at Clippers, at Phoenix. But looking at the next 11 games, they're going to be favored, I would assume, at least in 9 of the 11, if not 10 of the 11. And so it is hard to make a big starting lineup change or rotation change and take someone out when you're winning. And so I think it's different. Okay, LeBron comes back and you add him in, of course, that's obvious. But I think it's going to be tough to, unless they drop one of these games or even drop a couple of these games to teams they shouldn't, and we can point to the starting group being they're losing the first quarter, they're losing those minutes, or they're treading water. That would probably have to be the direction this goes to make the change sooner than later. I'm kind of looking at, okay, over the next 4 to 5 weeks with a larger sample size, the starting group is a plus. I made the point today on Lakers Collective that I'll just reiterate. So looking at the starting groups, I think the standard for the Lakers should be looking at OKC, Denver, and Houston. Right now, in my opinion, those are not just the 3 best teams in the West. Those are the 3 best teams in the NBA. I would pick them against anybody coming out of the East. Detroit, Cleveland, New York. I think all 3 of those teams would beat them. And honestly, I'm going to get a little spicy. I think they probably are sweeping or beating some of those teams. I think OKC is probably sweeping everybody. And then Houston and Denver, maybe they beat a couple of those teams in 5. But I think there's becoming a gap at the top of the West is the top of the league. And then everybody else. And to be frank, I think the Lakers might be the 4th best team in the league, just period. I think they're the 4th best team in the West, but that also might translate to the Lakers being the 4th best team in the league overall. And they'd beat Cleveland or New York. I think they would beat Detroit. But looking at those top 3 teams, one thing that really stands out with all of them is they all have double-digit point differentials, double-digit net ratings. They're all top 7 on both sides of the ball. And then their starting groups are dominant. Houston's had a couple different looks, where one with Josh Okogie and then one with their normal. With Okogie, they're winning those minutes by plus 15 points per 100 possessions. With their normal group, they're plus 7, which is a little bit lower than you'd want, but still a solid number. With OKC, they just throw out people and blow people out. OKC with their secondary starting group, and this is not even with J-Dub back yet. I believe that the regular starting group is plus 29, and the AJ Mitchell one is plus 31. So, just think about that. They're beating teams by 30 points per 100 possessions with their starters on the floor. They are absolutely blowing them out with their starters on the floor. That's a dominant, insane number with both of their starting groups. Then Denver with their primary starting group, they're plus 12 points per 100 possessions. You get to the Lakers. We could reference this starting group minus 15 off of 12 minutes. Okay, so obviously small sample size. But if you look at the quartet, the key quartet, putting LeBron to the side, and the Rui one is played 135 minutes or around 130 minutes. Then the Marcus one's played 85 minutes. With Rui in there, they are plus 3.6 points per 100 possessions. That's Rui, Luka, Austin, DA. Rui and DA have really struggled together. You swap in Marcus for Rui, that jumps up to plus 13.5 points per 100 possessions. And obviously adding LeBron, that plus 3.6, I think is going to be better. It's going to be closer to maybe 5, maybe 6, maybe even 7. But when you're dealing with OKC and Denver just steamrolling people with their starters and getting off to these hot starts, and you blink and you're playing Denver, you're down 12 in the first quarter. You blink and you're playing OKC, you're down 20 in the first quarter. Lakers are not getting off to those types of starts. And I just, this group will have the nights where they explode offensively. All 5 starters get 15 plus. They're hitting everything. They're getting to the free throw line. Rui's in a good rhythm. DA's in a good rhythm. But there's also going to be the nights like the Utah night where they get 37 dropped on them in the first quarter, 71 in the first half, and they're just getting lit up. And that's not all on the starters, but the starters set a certain tone, getting outscored 16-6. And then even in the end of the first half and the beginning of the third, they barely won those minutes. So I just think I don't want to overreact to one game, but we have had a bit of a sample size of that quartet and how they fared. And there has like the Rui DA combination defensively has been really bad. If you look at the numbers, they've been not doing well defensively. They have a negative net rating together. It's not been good. So I personally would like to stagger those two. And we do have a bit of a sample size already with those two, that like some of those minutes can be, there's just going to be some limitations on the defensive side with that pairing in terms of the processing and decision-making and rotations and whatnot. So I think it's pretty clearly that should be Marcus, but I think JJ might need more of a sample size to come to that conclusion, even though to me it's obvious. XX Mello, again, thank you for the super chat. Are the Lakers looking for a point guard? No. I mean, look, like I think there are some secondary needs that I've talked about. Like the big one is the fifth starter, and then could you potentially find a different look at backup center? Not a replacement, but an alternative for Jackson. Could you maybe find a scoring guard off the bench that you trust to run or help run the offense? Maybe they're in the Luka minutes, right? And it's like Luka plus another scorer / ball handler coming off the bench. Maybe that player, I think more of like a throw in a bigger trade for a wing. That's a possibility, but to my knowledge, no. I mean, you got enough ball handling with Luka, Austin, and LeBron, to say nothing of Marcus can do it, Gabe can do it, Jake can do it. More secondary guys, but like they can assume some usage there. So I think that's one of the last areas the Lakers really need. Like they have plenty of, you could argue they have the best playmaking passing duo of all time, and maybe even the best passing playmaking trio of all time. Like it's, I don't even know who's close. 90, is it 92-8 or 90-8? Whichever one. Thank you for the super chat. Unless we're getting starting power forward, trading Rui if small forward comes and Braun decides to retire, leave next summer, who's starting power forward? Don't think Jake could be power forward anytime soon, especially in the playoffs. So I've seen this sentiment out there, and I've talked about like how I view the optimal version of Rui, because right now, so LeBron's played in one game, and Rui has, I believe he's played in every game. Like that's one thing you got to give Rui a lot of credit. Rui is always available. But looking at the on-off for Rui up to this point this season, in terms of on-off differential, the Lakers are 3.6 points per 100 possessions better with Rui off than on. The only primary rotation guys that are worse than him are DeAndre Ayton and Jake LaRavia. If you want to extend it, you could include Vando and Dalton. I view them as outside the rotation right now. now you're getting into like players 10 and 11. But if we're looking at the top 9, the only players in the top 9 worse than Rui are Ayton and Laravia. And specifically, the area that the Lakers are defending or are worse in with Rui is they are 6 points, 6.1 specifically, points per 100 possessions, worse with Rui on the floor defensively than off. And I think that's the issue, is that if you want to make Rui the starting power forward, I don't know that, like, if Luka is technically the other front court player, because Luka does tend to play, I mean, Luka's best at the 4 or like a 3.5. He's not guarding guards. So if you're telling me that the front court of the future defensively is Ayton, Rui, and Luka, I just don't think that's going to be a good defensive front court. And I've made the point before that with Rui, I think you need a specific build for Rui to be a starting power forward for you. And I look at Minnesota with Gobert and McDaniels, and I look at OKC with Chet / Hartenstein and J-Dub as I think you want Rui to be your worst front court defender. You could make a case. I mean, I would probably say Ayton's the best of those three, of Ayton, Rui, Luka, but it's like none of those guys are all defense guys or close to that, or even like, I don't even know if I'd say any of them are like a 7 out of 10 on defense. So I just think that's a really limited defensive front court that is not athletic enough, probably not good enough on the glass. I don't know. So I think, to your point, I don't think Jake is the answer long-term as the starting power forward. I think you probably have to figure that out next summer, and it might just end up being LeBron for one more year. But if you are banking on Rui being the long-term starting power forward, I think you probably have to change the build of the team. And of course, Luka is going to still be there, but then I think I want a better defender than Ayton at the 5, to be completely honest. Like, I think we've seen the limitation early with Ayton and Rui defensively. So that's my concern, honestly, with and then if you're keeping Austin, now it's a whole other thing where now you have Austin in the backcourt, and like, now if it's Austin, Luka, and DA, I think really limits like what you can ask of Rui, because you actually have to probably put more defensively on Rui. So I hope that makes sense. I think if they are going to have Ayton, Luka, and Austin all in the starting group and all as like mainstays moving forward, I do have some concern with Rui as the long-term power forward. I think at that point, you probably want a defensive-minded 2-3, like a Herb Jones type next to Luka and Austin. And then you want a more like an Aaron Gordon type next to Ayton. And in the front court, a guy who could defend the 3 or the 4, maybe even the 5, depending on the matchup. So I think you actually want more defensive players in the other 2 spots, or like, kind of lean more into the defensive end. So I'm not sold personally on him being the long-term power forward fit with what we've seen from this group so far. I think if 4/5 of your starting group is Ayton, Luka, Austin, and Rui, really good offensive group, mediocre to bad defensive group. That's my read on it. Mac Roblox 94, thank you for the super chat. Tell the Lakers to start Marcus Smart and not Rui. I don't got that type of power. I mean, I can convey it to people, but look, I've been trying to tell the Lakers my lineup decisions for years, and it goes in one ear, out the other, and then eventually they end up doing it. But I was very vocally against the Torian Prince situation, and it did not matter. Mo Love, OG, would Goodwin have fit? Thank you for the super chat. Yeah, I think so. I think to be completely, I mean, they're different players and they have different skill sets, but I think you could make a case for like a real, let's just say for argument's sake, take Bronny off the team and put Goodwin there, because I think that's probably would have been like the spot for Goodwin. If just thinking about all the minutes Bronny's gotten compared to like Goodwin being in that spot, and then also I think when fully healthy, you could make an argument, and I would make it, that I think Gabe versus Goodwin should be a real competition. I don't like, look, we know JJ thinks very fondly of Gabe, so I don't want to naively assume that Gabe would be out of the rotation if Goodwin was on the team. But he also thought very highly of Goodwin and sometimes would play him over Vando in certain situations. So I think different types of players, but Goodwin with the size and with what we saw from him defensively, I think would have fit really nicely with this group. So I think he would have fit. Like, I don't know, again, with the full squad, he's probably more than 9th or 10th man, but I think, he could have helped for sure. What does it matter, bro? On-off numbers, net ratings with Rui at his natural position are even more alarming because he's on fire from field/3 at this point. Highlights how bad he is at everything else. What does it matter, bro? Is going hard on Rui. I hear you. And again, I feel like a broken record sometimes because I try to make this point with Rui. Like, it's not specific to him. I think just like with most role players, you need a certain context to a lineup or a certain system or a certain play style to maximize your skill set and to limit your weaknesses, limit your shortcomings. And I think offensively, it's an incredible fit with Rui as a shooter. He's the best shooter on the team, right? Like, up to this point in the season and even going off the last 2 seasons, Rui's the best shooter on the team and really good finisher in transition. We know about the baseline cuts. I think offensively, that is basically what you want from that position. Like, most of the guys that we're talking about in terms of, like, Herb Jones is an offensive downgrade. Dylan Brooks right now is an offensive upgrade with how he's playing, but he is a worse shooter and he does have the ball in his hands more than Rui. So, like, while he is producing more than Rui, I mean, I think people are sleeping on it. Dylan Brooks is averaging 20 points a game. Now, I don't think it's going to sustain, but, like, well, you could argue his production is an upgrade on Rui. I think Rui's a better fit offensively. And then Wiggins, I think Wiggins is just straight up better, and he is having a good year, and he's not the shooter that Rui is, but I think he matches or surpasses him in just about everything else. But even then, you could argue just because of the shooting alone, Rui's a better fit. The issue is just the defensive end. And the Lakers are deploying Rui essentially as their wing stopper, as their primary perimeter defender. It's either Austin against guards or Rui against forwards. And I just don't think that's championship level, especially when the teams are talking about Denver's throwing out Christian Brown and Aaron Gordon. OKC's throwing out Hartenstein, Chet, Dort, J-Dub. Shea's their worst defender. Shea would be the Lakers' best defender, at least with among the starters. And then you got Houston with Thompson. Jabari Smith has been a really good rim protector as a wing. They go with the weird, like, Steven Adams is fine. I think big body. Şengün can be a liability. KD is 7 foot, so he's got a certain amount of length. Like, Houston, I think it's more some of, like, the bench guys coming off, and just, Thompson is a defensive player of the year candidate. So it's just not, like, you can't. I mean, if we were ranking the top 4 teams in the West, take the 5 or take their each 5-man lineup, the starting group. I think you go through, like, the Lakers might not even have a player in the top 10 defensively of those teams collect. I mean, probably not. I would take every OKC player. I would take at least 2 of the Houston players, and then at least 2 of the Denver. Yeah, so I mean, they're maybe right there. You might get to, like, Rui or LeBron at 10. That's not good enough against those teams. So part of it would be Marcus, right? I think Marcus would jump up a few spots, and then it's also potentially making a trade. But yeah, I mean, I don't want to pile on Rui. I think it's more so just he's being asked to do certain things defensively that he's just not equipped to do, and it's not his fault. It's more of a roster construction fault or shortcoming. Kami, thank you for the super chat. Rui's a role player. Why cater to him so much? This is apparently the Rui. This is the Rui chat. I get it, but I mean, I think the Lakers, as we also saw today in some of the comments that were made, he's viewed as a developmental win for the Lakers. He's viewed as potentially a cornerstone. I think they're going to try to probably get something done on the extension front. We'll see if they can come to a realistic number right? And what he wants versus what they want. And there's a lot of moving parts with that. Austin's contract, they have until June 30th, so it makes sense to wait until the last minute when you have a clear picture of what everyone's going to do. You'll know at that point what's DA doing, what's Marcus doing, what's LeBron doing, what's Austin's market. You're going to have a lot of answers to questions that will determine whether it makes sense to extend Rui and what that number potentially looks like. But I think the catering to him, I mean, look, like there's plenty of smart people. Like I think Zach Lowe's the best in the business, and he's a big Rui fan and thinks he should be starting. And I disagree with his assessment of Rui's defense, but I respect his opinion, and he thinks that Rui should continue to start and play a lot. So, I mean, there are people who think highly of Rui or think highly of Rui's fit, and I get it certainly from an offensive perspective. I get it. I just think that when I try to build a lineup, I want some two-way balance, and the clear gap in this lineup is the defensive end. And you have a player who can defend multiple positions and has been among your most effective players in terms of on-off. I think that guy makes the most sense. The one thing Marcus needs to do, though, is he needs to get in the gym and start hitting these corner threes and above the break threes at his prior rate of like low to mid 30s, because that's been the one thing holding him back right now. Shooting 21% on catch and shoot threes. Can't have that. Easy peasy. Herb, actually realistic. LA priced out. I think it's too early to tell with what New Orleans is going to do. I think he's semi-realistic. I don't think he is fully on the table yet. I think there's different scenarios and pathways to him being on the table. I do think it's going to be expensive. I think it is going to cost the first round pick. It's probably going to cost more than just the first round pick. I think Rui in the first is a starting point. I don't think it's getting any lower than that. And I think it's more likely going higher than that. I think that's worth it, but we'll see where the Lakers are at in about a month or so. I don't think they're priced out, but I do think if it turns into the one thing right now with the Lakers is they do not have the draft capital between the first and second round picks currently to get into an arms race with another team. So like, I mean, it was like, let's go back quickly to the DFS situation. There was some gamesmanship between, Brooklyn was kind of playing Memphis and LA off of each other, and they were trying to get a first out of Memphis, and Memphis was hesitant to get the first or to give up a first, and they were trying to do it with a couple seconds, and then LA did not want to give up the first, but they came in with the 3 seconds and they were able to pull the trigger. They don't have that type of flexibility right now in terms of maybe they could flip someone and get some picks back or seconds back or something and then go do that. But realistically, if they get into an arms race, they're probably going to lose just because they can only offer 1 first and or 1 second. And it's like, again, I don't think their swaps are that valuable right now. So I don't think they're priced out, though. It just depends how available he is. Right. Like, I'll say this right now, I don't think he's like available, but I think if we're projecting out the way New Orleans is trending, I think they're going to make some of these guys available. And if we're ranking guys, I think Fears has been a hit for them. I think Queen is looking like a hit for them and kind of has to be based on the trade they made. And then obviously Trey Murphy is a guy I'd be fighting to keep if I'm Pelicans fans, if I'm the Pelicans front office. Like, so I think Herb, I'd personally keep Herb as well, but Herb is probably lower in the pecking order. Still got Zion there and stuff. So I think he's a guy that could be poached for the right price. I just think it's going to be a bit of a high price. Then 90, I want to just say 92.8. I'm saying if trade Rui, need to get starting power forward than small forward, especially for the future after LeBron. Got you. Okay. I did take your question probably in a different direction than you wanted it. So I apologize. Yes and no. So yes, in the sense of eventually they do need to get a starting power forward. The part I will disagree with is I don't think they need that starting power forward this season because I view LeBron as the starting power forward for this season. and even Luka to a lesser extent, because people. It is like Luka is a weird player in the sense of he is a point guard offensively and he's more of a power forward defensively. And I will say with Luka's defensive backline playmaking, with the steals and the deflections and the defensive rebounding, he probably is pound for pound the Lakers' best rebounder, or at least it's competition between him, LeBron, and Ayton depending on the night. Like Luka checks a lot of boxes of what you would want from a power forward. Obviously, you want to protect him and support him with the requisite rim protection and defense rebounding at the 5, and then ideally like a Jaden McDaniels like wing stopper type at the 3. But Luka and LeBron, I think, actually have the Lakers covered defensively at the 4. So I like, for example, if you're like, let's trade Rui for John Collins, I don't think that makes a lot of sense. I think the Lakers need a wing, and then you can try to find that power forward in the summer. But if you're just swapping Rui for a power forward, I think at that point you might as well just keep Rui. Like the whole point is they need a defensive wing that is not currently on the roster that you need to try to get flip Rui for. That's the whole point of it. Now, longer term, yes, there's a question about who's going to be the starting power forward. What does the starting lineup look like? But that's more of an off-season question, not a this season question. I think this season you have LeBron, you have Luka, you have DA. I think you're fine there. You need to go get that wing. All right, going to go about 5 to 10 more minutes. Kane Carter, hey Jovan, is there any chance the Lakers could move Rui and a first for a piece from OKC like AC? You could try to sway them into playing Wallace and Mitchell more, that Rui can start for them. I don't think so, because they already have their starting front court of Hartenstein, Chet, and J-Dub. So, technically Dort can defend. I think he could function similarly to Marcus Smart. Dort is obviously a better shooter and defender than Marcus Smart, but they're like, obviously right now J-Dub's out, but once J-Dub is back, and he will eventually be back, they have Hartenstein, Chet, and J-Dub. Rui's not starting over any of those guys. And then you have Dort and Shea in the backcourt. So in a vacuum, I would do that if I'm the Lakers in a second. If I'm OKC, I'm not helping the Lakers, and I think AC is too important for them. And they play him limited minutes, but he often is closing games. And the performance he had against Jokic in Game 7, I don't know that anyone else on that team could have done that. I don't think J-Dub could have done that. I don't think Dort could have done that. I think there was a specific reason why it was Caruso and why he was able to do that. He's just a straight dog. And so longer term, not even longer term, like as soon as this summer, there's going to be some big questions for OKC in terms of Hartenstein and Dort and their team options and what ends up happening. But for this year, if I'm OKC, I'm the heavy favorites. I'm not messing with that. And there's no reason to frankly make your team worse when you have a shot to go back to back. Tom, thank you for the super chat. What's up with Vando? He's less active recently. Are you talking like on the court or off the court? I would say on the court. I've talked about it before, but I just think right now the finishing has declined, 4 straight years declining. The 3-point shot has not materialized, and then they're switching so much that it negates a lot of his strengths defensively. So right now I think he's at best the 10th man, but might not even be the 10th man. The Wannabe GMs podcast, thank you for the super chat. One more, Jovan, let's get creative. What if there's a way to swap Pat Will with Vando? We got to clarify Patrick Williams and not a different Pat. Checking his contract right now. 18 this year, 18, then 18 player option in 28, 29. So my favorite running bit on the show, he will be picking that contract up. He will be exercising that player option. I will break that news now. Patrick Williams this year shooting 41% on threes. Played 21 minutes a game. Has not started, so primarily a bench guy. If I'm the Lakers, I do this. I guess if I'm Chicago, this is where the Lakers lack of. If I'm Chicago, I don't think a second is enough, but a first is an overpay, obviously, from the Lakers side. So I think Vando and two. I don't know. It's not a great contract. I don't like the contract for Pat Williams. To me, he's more of a. He's not like drastically overpaid. I don't know. To me, he's more of like a partial non-taxpayer mid-level guy. He's probably more of like an $8 to $10 million guy, not an $18 million guy. I don't know. I've always liked Patrick Williams. I know a lot of people are down on him. It's not a good contract though, and obviously neither is Vando's. I just think Patrick Williams is better than Vando, and his shooting is an important weapon for Chicago, where Vando obviously doesn't bring that. Now he does bring a certain level of defense that I think Chicago could use. That's an interesting one. If you're the Lakers, you're taking on $7 million extra dollars over the next couple of years each year, and then also the third year. So, I mean, you could argue maybe the Lakers ask for some draft capital. Now that I'm thinking a little bit about it, like, do you get a second or two for taking on the Pat Williams contract? I don't know. That's an interesting one. I hadn't really thought, because I think, to be honest, like, you either have to attach something to Vando or you take on a worse contract, and you could argue Pat Williams' contract is worse than Vando's. So that, but not like worse to the, not like Jeremy Grant worse, where it's like triple Vando's. But that's an interesting one. What's up, Smokey, in the chat? Poster King, Jake guarded. Yeah, Jake did play Jokic well. That was in my film breakdown. Cool tie. Lakers receive Herb Jones, Misi, Okoro. Pelicans receive Vando, Dalton, Thero, 2 firsts. Bulls receive Gabe in a second. Are Bulls giving up a first here? Where are the 2 firsts coming from? That would be my question, because Lakers can't trade 2 firsts. And if you're saying Bulls are giving up a Okoro and a first for Gabe in a second, they would not do that. Pelicans getting 2 firsts to get off Jones and Misi, but you take on Vando. Pelicans probably consider that. You also get Thero and Dalton as like 2 younger pieces. I think Lakers and Pelicans do this. If you're saying Lakers give up 2 firsts, they can't. If you're saying Bulls give up a first, I don't think they would do that. King Carter, are guys like Lou Dort and Caruso better suited to guard Jokic than any big man? Depends how much contact they're allowed to get away with. I will note that Caruso basically was mugging Jokic up and down the floor. And we saw Rui do that. We saw Vando do that in the game that the Lakers won, although Vando picked up like a million fouls in 6. I think he fouled out in 6 minutes or something crazy like that. Or he had like 5 fouls. Yes and no. Like, I think if you are able to get into his handle and like tip the ball away and just be physical and get away with some contact, like I guess a physical big guard / small wing is maybe the best archetype. Like, of course, I think you probably want a level of strength, and we've seen, I think, at times like Gobert or Towns or like that combination of putting 2 7-footers and swarming him. To a lesser extent, Hartenstein and Chet also were able to do that at times. That's probably the path, is like 2 good or 2. I don't want to say Cat's a good defender, but Cat actually is post defense. That is like a specific area of defense that Cat actually is solid at. But, it's sort of like putting a big body on him, then funneling him into a rim protector is like one approach. And then the other approach is some sort of pesky, strong, big guard or small wing who can try to use speed against him and really attack the dribble. But there's no real there's no one answer because, I mean, the crazy thing is I just talked about Chet, Hartenstein, Dort, and Caruso. That's four players on OKC. Like that's why they are uniquely equipped to go at Denver. Mishra, in terms of Lakers legends, who are the big three on the Lakers? I think Luka is Kobe, but way better playmaker, worse defender. LeBron is Magic, but more athletic. Austin is Jerry West, but Jerry did it longer for now. I mean, I guess I would agree. I think I would agree largely with everything you said. I think with Luka, there's that he does have that killer joy that Rob has talked about, comparing it to Kobe. But to your point, there is some, I would say, heliocentric similarities there, but Luka is much more of a point guard than Kobe was, and Kobe, to your point, was a much better defender. We know about his all defense streak and numbers. LeBron and Magic, I mean, that's been a comparison since LeBron entered the league. I would also note he's much more of a natural scorer than Magic and a better shooter than Magic, to say nothing about how athletic or explosive he was. And then Austin to Jerry, I mean, it feels a little premature. I know you're not saying he is Jerry West, but I guess Jerry West, Gail Goodrich, we can only compare him to white Lakers guards. Trying to think of Mike Penberthy. Will Austin Reaves make the All-Star team? It depends how his numbers maintain. I think it's too early to tell. Also, if LeBron's in and out of the lineup, I think even if Austin's numbers drop with LeBron, he can probably prop them back up when LeBron is out. I think right now, if we were making the All-Star team, he would be on it, but it's too early to tell, in my opinion. Herb and Alvarado for Rui, first round pick and second round pick. I would do that if I'm the Lakers. I would consider that if I'm New Orleans, but it ultimately comes down to how they view Herb longer term. I know what you're saying. Misha clarifies play style, not legacy. Yeah, I mean, if we're saying which the analog for each one of them in terms of a Laker great and their spirit / play style, I do agree with what you're saying. And to be clear, I mean, Luka is so early in his career that we can't make the Kobe comparison, and he has to, that's. LeBron is at the end of his career, so you can compare LeBron and Magic, and obviously for most people, LeBron is ahead of Magic. So not as a Laker, but for the totality of his career. Kane Carter asking about Dan Wojcicki, my favorite Dan Wojcicki stories. I'm glad you said can tell, because most of my Dan Wojcicki stories cannot tell. I mean, I'm trying to think. Dan's just a fun hang, and he's someone that I'd get lunch with on the road. He's a big lunch guy, but also he's just always down to do something. So whereas I think you guys saw the dynamic on the beat writer roundtable that we did, but Dave is always getting pulled into TV or something with ESPN, so he'll sometimes be a little off the grid. And then Kobe, who knows what Kobe's doing? Kobe's up to no good. He's doing his thing. And then, so I feel like Dan is more available and accessible in a way. But no, he's got the gift of gab. He is a very extroverted, fun person and good conversationalist, which I think helps with the job. But I mean, again, a lot of the stories are not podcast, public appropriate. I'm trying to think of I mean, we had where were we? Might have been Toronto. Where I'm trying to remember where we. I think we were somewhere. We might have been Toronto for St. Paddy's Day last year. That was a fun time, and it might have not. We have a lot of drunken fun times. I will say that. All right. About to wrap unless we got a couple more connections. Or sorry, I did the thing where I read something in the chat and then I say it out loud. Glad I chose the word connection and not something else, but a couple more questions. Connor Phillips, I like this one. How long do you think it'll be before the East is as strong or stronger than the West? Seems like the West has been much stronger for the majority of NBA history. There's a big shift, I think, in the late 90s, like post Jordan, because if we go through NBA history, the 80s were obviously pretty split between the Lakers and Celtics. Lakers did win more rings, but then you also had Philly in there. And so, like, if we go through the 80s, it's like Lakers, Celtics, Lakers, Sixers, Celtics, Lakers, Celtics, Lakers, Lakers, Pistons. And then it goes into the 90s with the Pistons. But that right there is 5 Lakers titles, 3 Celtics titles, 1 Sixers, 1 Pistons. So 5-5 East-West. I'm not going to go before that because I think the league was much different before the 3-point line and the ABA expansion and all that stuff. So go through the 80s, it's pretty split. Go into the 90s. You actually start the 90s, Pistons, Bulls, Bulls, Bulls. So Pistons and 3 straight Bulls years. So 4 for the East. Then you get Houston, back to Bulls, 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 Bulls. So the 90s was actually predominantly East, obviously, because of the Bulls and Jordan. But until the Spurs kind of salvaged it at the end, but you had 6-3, actually 7-3, including the Pistons, in terms of East versus West in the 90s. Then the shift starts really again, 98, 99 with the Spurs. But then you go Spurs, Lakers, Lakers, Spurs. So 5 straight for the West. Pistons, Spurs, Heat, Spurs, Celtics, Lakers, Lakers, Mavericks. So that stretch of 98, 99 through 2010, 11 of you have 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 West titles and 3 East titles. So that 13-year stretch, 10 of the 13 are in the West. It's a little bit more balanced in the 2010s with Miami winning the first couple, but then it goes San Antonio, Golden State, Cleveland, Golden State, Toronto, and then eventually the Lakers. But looking at like the 2010s, it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 West, 4 East, and then we go into now where Lakers, Bucks, Warriors, Nuggets, Celtics, Thunder. So still West leaning. So really we see the turn of the millennium in terms of champions. I know you're not saying just champions, because to the point I made earlier, I think you could argue 3 of the 3 top teams in the league are in the West, and potentially even 4. I think going through, if we just look at like the standings, right? Like Washington has been a mess for most of the last, most of their history, but most of the last couple of decades, right? Like they had the John Wall, Bradley Beal era. They made the second round once. They had a brief flash with Arenas before he flashed a gun. And, so like Washington's been a mess. Indiana's been steady, and they've obviously made the finals a couple times over the last 25 years. Brooklyn's largely been a mess. Charlotte's been a mess. Milwaukee's been good with Giannis, won a title. Boston's been pretty good over the last couple decades. Orlando's been good, but just won finals. Atlanta's not made a finals. They've always been solid, but like not quite there. Chicago had the Rose stretch, but otherwise has largely been underwhelming. Philly, we don't even have to get into that. Miami won 3 titles this millennium. Cleveland with LeBron. New York has been largely a mess. Toronto has been a bit of a mess. Detroit's been a big mess until more recently. So I think it's mainly like you could argue if we're ranking all the organizations in the league, 5 of the bottom like 7 or 8 would be in the East. And I think that's been one of the bigger issues has been there's just been a lot of incompetence in the East. And so when is that going to change? I don't know. It probably have to go another 5 to 10 years for maybe it to like shift back. But looking at the West, it's like you got OKC set up for the foreseeable future with the best team in the league and a bajillion picks. You got Denver with Jokic. You got Houston now with Şengün, Durant, Thompson, longer term Şengün and Thompson. You got the Lakers with Luka. You got the Spurs with Wemby. You got the Timberwolves with Ant. Suns got Booker. Warriors, obviously shorter term. Blazers are on the rise. They still need that number 1 guy. Utah rebuilding. Memphis is going to tear it down. Clippers are in a tough spot. Dallas is Cooper Flag. You go to the East, it's like, okay, Cade. Toronto is a good story. I don't think they're a contender. New York's got Brunson. Cleveland's got Mitchell and Mobley. Miami, I think, still needs that like true number 1. Philly's interesting. Longer term, I'm bullish on them. But like, I don't know. You just go down the rest of the East and they just don't have the caliber of player that the West has. I think you could argue like 6 of the top 7, 6 of the top 8 players in the league are in the West. So that's the issue right now. Light him up. With Wemby, Jokic, and Şengün going to the world team, do you think if Ayton keeps playing this way, he has a shot at making the All-Star team? I do not. And the reason is because it's you really have to be a top 16 player. And I think if we go through it, like, so that I think there's like 5 guys clearly that I think are going to make, and even 6 if you want to throw in Şengün, but it's like Wemby, Jokic, Şengün, Luka, Giannis, Shea. That gets you to 6 international players. They want 8 international players, 16 American players. Now, technically, Ayton actually would qualify for international because he is from the Bahamas and has played for the Bahamian national team. So I think that would actually disqualify him from playing for Team USA. And then with the 3 centers you just named, to say nothing of Giannis, that would probably disqualify him. If we're judging just the 16, though, I think you have to look at OKC would probably get Chet, and Chet's better than Ayton, having a better season. I think Aaron Gordon has a stronger case than DA. I think Amen Thompson probably has a stronger case. And KD is going to get in. So let's just say Chet and KD to be conservative here. I think Austin has a stronger case. Ant has a stronger case. Julius Randle has a stronger case. Booker has a stronger case. Steph has a stronger case. Then you start getting into Deni Avdija, maybe, depending on where Portland's at. Then you go to the East and you got Cade. You got Scotty Barnes. You got Brunson, you got Mitchell, you got Mobley, you got Bam, you got Maxey, you got Giddey, Trey, depending on when he comes back, Paolo, Franz, Jaylen Brown. Like you just go down, and I just don't see him. Now, technically, they're trying to do 12 West, 12 East, and somehow get it 8 international, 16 US, but like, with that, it inevitably is going to just be like the top 16 US and the top 8 international. And I don't think Ayton has a real shot in that top 16. If it was a more just going off of, and again, he would be actually on the international team. So that I don't think he's a top 8 international player. I was just making the argument if he was on Team USA, it would be tough. No, Ronald, you're right. Denny's not American. He's he's Israeli and Serbian. And Franz, you're right. So I did list a couple of even without those guys, though, he's not there. And again, he'd actually be part on the other side. So, I mean, we could go through the 8, but I think you put Denny, you put Franz, and then I'm trying to think if there's anybody else. Giddy's actually Australian, so Giddy wouldn't count either. I listed a few guys, but again, I think DA would be on technically the international team. Kami, thank you for super chat from ESPN September ranking. Flag makes top 16 before AR. Well, yeah, I think a lot of people look foolish for the preseason rankings for Austin make people look foolish. Melo mentioned Siakam. Yeah, so I didn't even mention, the reason I didn't mention LeBron is because I think LeBron might miss due to games, but if LeBron is eligible, he will obviously make it. I think he's kind of borderline right now, just in terms of games played. But okay, I'm going to wrap here though. I appreciate you all. I'm actually going to go live tomorrow, so I will not be gone for too long. Probably going to pick some time in the afternoon. If you guys have a preference in terms of what time I go, I would love to know in the comment section or know right now in the chat. Probably somewhere between 3 to 7 p.m. But yeah, I probably airing more on like the 3 to 5 p.m. side. But let me know. Appreciate you all, though. Shout out to the Late Night Gang. For those watching on YouTube, please be sure to hit that subscribe button, turn on channel notifications, and like and comment on this video. For those listening on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or your podcast platform of choice, please be sure to follow, download, and leave a 5-star review. I'll be back tomorrow. I will talk to you all then. Seeing later is better. Good to know. I will do my best to go later then. But appreciate you all and talk to you all tomorrow.